Hey, all right. I think we're on. Scott Baker, managing editor of The Blaze, and we're going to talk with Vince Flynn. In fact, we're in New York City, and as we tape this, the Columbus Day Parade is going on outside, and we just glanced over, and there was something about explosives being found near the parade route. All of a sudden, I feel like I'm in a Vince Flynn novel. The news actually has to make you feel like you're like reading your idea notes, doesn't it?
You know, it's wild. When I'm under deadline, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll think to myself, did I dream it? Did I write it, or did I read it? Because it gets so intertwined sometimes because of the level of research that goes into these books, the level of sources that I have as well, and then for 4 months out of the year, more than that, but for 4 really hard months where I'm working almost 7 days a week, I'm trying to figure out what the terrorists are going to do next.
Right. Now, over the decade, you've been churning out Mitch Rapp books and hitting one bestseller out of the park after another. You've covered a lot of territory, and from pre 9/11 to after 9/11, and the new book, American Assassin, kind of goes back to the beginning and before, which is an interesting twist. So for the people that are expecting kind of like the next chapter in the Mitch Rapp story, will this surprise them that it's actually kind of like a prequel?
No, I always say I read the Ludlum, the Bourne series out of order, and I loved it. I loved that I could go back. I liken it to, going to, my wife grew up in northern Minnesota, going to her small town for the first time. I never knew her as a child.
Right.
So to go back and learn all these details about her life, I found to be just absolutely fascinating. And this book is actually the perfect starting place for someone who has not read the series. I was saying the other day on something that my wife is a big Friends fan, the TV show.
Right.
When I was writing my first book, I was bartending at night, so I did that night that it was on. I was working, so I was never a big Friends guy. And then we got married, and the reruns were airing, and we started watching those, and I turned into a Friends fan. I was fine.
Right.
But you're always kind of afraid to jump in the water with something that's become popular culture like that. And the Rapp series has become so popular that I've met a few people that'll say, especially at signings, husbands and wives will go up and it'll be one or the other saying, I'm trying to get him or I'm trying to get her to read it, but they just said, I've missed the boat. He's been doing this for a decade. This is the perfect book to start with. Because it shows you Rapp's motivation, why he was recruited. What drives a man who at the age of 22 decides, I'm going to go become an assassin for the CIA? And there are young gentlemen who face this real world question.
And there I mean, for a lot of people in the real world, 9/11 was that, but the Lockerbie bombing was kind of the setting.
That was the impetus for Rapp. And, so I went to high school. I graduated in '84 and then college in '88. And that December after I graduated was the Pan Am Lockerbie.
Right. Yeah.
And this upsets me because people say disaster, tragedy. It was the Pan Am Lockerbie terrorist attack.
Right. Right.
And it's a little known fact that there was a large group of Syracuse students were coming home for the Christmas break on that flight, and they all went down. And it just stuck in my mind. This is what happens when we don't confront terrorism. And what would it be like if you had a loved one on that flight or a child or something, how upset you would be. And that was in the backstory about Rapp way back in the beginning, but I never really gave all the details until this book now.
You mentioned back at the beginning you're off tending bar. Probably a lot of your fans kind of know your story, but for the ones that don't, this was not a predictable course for you to end up being best-selling author Vince Flynn.
It was, first of all, I never got better than a C in an English class in high school or college.
Inspiration to students everywhere.
I sit on the board of St. Thomas Academy where I went to high school. And it's an all-male Catholic military prep school.
Right.
They since I've graduated, they keep raising the standards of academic excellence.
And you wanted to go into the military too.
Yeah. So every time they want to build a new building, I like to remind them that. So most of the guys you're going to go ask the money for them were the C students. So you should stop. Maybe you should think about stop raising the academic standards.
Right.
But so diagnosed with dyslexia when I was in grade school, and kind of hid from it for years. I'm in college, And I decided, because of some embarrassing situations, that I needed to confront this. So
Right.
I started reading for the very first time up for enjoyment. And the next thing you know, I was addicted to the thing I was most fearful of growing up. And I found that I had a gift. And the gift was that every time I picked up a book, within 10 pages, I would know exactly what was going to happen. And I'm that way with TV shows and movies. You know,
You just see the arc.
Well, you know what's funny? It freaks my kids out. I have a 15-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old.
Right.
And I will sit there and tell them what's going to happen next. And my daughter, who's most like me, the 10-year-old, will pause the movie and say, "Dad, you've seen this before." And I'll say, No, I haven't. So now she's in on the game.
Right.
She's gotten really good at it, too.
So do they just like throw characters at you and then you come up with the story, instantly? I mean, it can,
No, we'll be watching a movie, and I'll say,
and
"Guess
you'll have
what's?"
it figured out.
I'm to the point where I will blurt out dialogue.
Right.
I'll blurt out dialogue before it's spoken, and they just turn around, they look at me like, "What? How did you know?" And I think, my guess is dyslexic kids see patterns.
Huh.
They can kind of see where things are going, which helps me immensely in writing
Right.
an espionage political thriller. A lot of my research fills in 3 of the 5 unknown variables when I'm talking to the CIA or something like that. I then have to project and guess what the classified information would be. And early on, I was very aggressive about that. There's some stuff that I changed in my books because some of my sources said you're a little too close to home here.
Right.
But it wasn't until Consent to Kill that I stumbled upon something by pure accident that made me really stop and think about what I put in these books. And
Because it's not like you want to be the guy saying, "Oh, I'm giving the terrorists ideas on what to do."
well, in fact, I learned something by guessing in a private conversation a few years ago. And the person sitting across from me was so shocked that I had guessed this. They basically pleaded with me to never repeat it. And I said, all right, I won't. And I haven't. And the funny thing is, this piece of information wouldn't really have helped the terrorists. It would have helped like the ACLU or Eric Holder or somebody like that.
I'm tempted to say, "Fade to black, tell me," and then when we come back up, I'll be like, "No way, really?"
I haven't told anybody. I haven't even told my wife. And it's something that makes such sense
Right.
that you just I can't repeat it.
What's your take on the Defense Department and what they've done with this memoir, the Operation
The
Dark
redacted
Heart?
memoir.
Yeah, the redacted, where they bought 10,000 copies and destroyed them.
I think it's, in a way, it's somewhat laughable because I think that the information is, by and large, already gotten out there. It's been leaked here and there. And
So what kind of message are they trying to send?
I think what they're trying to do is tell the other people in positions where they've had to sign a national security non-disclosure document that you can't do this,
Right.
or we're going to play hardball. And so in that sense, from that one perspective, it makes sense that you would try to shut this thing down. As far as the information leaking, we're in a weird day and age right now where you've got the WikiLeaks deal going on,
Right.
and we're a nation at war right now. So you kind of stop and you ask yourself, well, if we're at war and this guy is knowingly getting secrets from somebody who worked in the Pentagon and printing them for all the world to see, isn't he by de facto an enemy of the state?
Right.
And if so, what are we doing to stop him? We've kind of lost our stomach to go do the nasty things that war requires. And I don't know if we'll get back to it. My guess is if something truly horrific happens,
Right.
chemical attack, nuclear attack, something along those lines, that kills enough people, you will see the patience level for people just disappear quickly on these issues.
Is that the role for a Vince Flynn book? You want it to be enjoyable. You want people to be interested.
But I want it to be thought-provoking.
But you want it to kind of create and force us to contemplate scenarios that we really don't want to think about, but we need to. And this does it in a way that maybe it has a little more traction than just kind of flipping by something.
Yeah, it has more traction because it holds your interest.
Right.
Not everybody, has the desire to read a 16-page Atlantic Monthly article on torture.
Right.
And then there's the issue of it being biased. If you do read it, and
Right.
where's it coming from? Is it truly representing both sides of that argument? Which I don't think I've never seen a piece in the Atlantic that does. It's usually written from that one perspective, which is that torture doesn't work. And the argument I like to throw at people is, if torture doesn't work, then why do we make all of our CIA operatives go through what they basically call is a hell weekend,
Right.
where they bring them down on the farm, they don't let them eat, they don't let them sleep, they manipulate the temperature, they slap them around, and before the thing starts, they tell them, you're going to talk.
Right.
You will talk. Everybody talks. You break. The key is we need you to keep your mouth shut for 24 to 48 hours so we can move our assets out of harm's way. They do the same thing with Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps pilots. If they go down behind enemy lines, that they've got to zip it up for 24 to 48 hours and withstand, but they tell them all, you will break. And so enhanced interrogation, which is what I prefer to call it.
Right. Yeah.
I think torture, we're a civilized society, and torture is not something that we would really want to talk about or condone in any way, shape, or form. But I define torture as what Saddam Hussein used to do,
Right.
which is to bring a guy's daughter into a room and say, talk or we're going to gang rape her.
Yeah.
Or sign this confession or we're going to gang rape her. So that does not, that's going to get you a false confession. What our people in the enhanced interrogation system do is they break somebody down over a period of time and get them to talk. And they know, like a good prosecutor in a courtroom, they know the answer to the first 15 questions they ask. They want to get a baseline established. Is this person being honest or not?
Right.
And they go from there.
What will for the fans of this series? This one takes them back to the beginning. What are they going to learn about Mitch Rapp that will surprise them?
I think what they're going to learn going all the way back to the beginning like this is that even Rapp wasn't entirely sure he had the goods to do this. He thought he did, but for anybody that launches into a serious career, there's a leap of faith. How did you know you could do radio the first time? There's a real leap of faith there. That when you look at that clock and well, when I wrote my first book, Leap of Faith, you just don't know. So he's a little green, but he hasn't been poisoned yet. What you're going to find, later, and if you read all the way through the series, what you find is a guy who has become so absolutely distrustful of Washington, D.C. and the people that run Washington that he wants to spend as little time there as possible.
How much time do you spend there? We just have a couple of minutes here, and I know that you've said. I mean, you have Republicans that read your books, you have Democrats that read your books, you have presidents that read your books. What kind of experience is it for you when you are in?
When I'm in
city?
Washington, I always laugh that it seems like once a year at least I'll run into I'll meet a new politician in Washington, and it'll tell me how much they love the books, and half the time I'm looking at them thinking, well, you were the motivation for the jerk in Consent to Kill or whatever it was. But by and large, they're charming people. That's how they get elected.
Right, exactly.
That's how they raise money.
Right.
You have to be somewhat charming. The issue is, I think the town becomes so poisonous, and you end up just selling your soul quickly.
Yeah, right. You going to write anything that's not a political thriller? You ever just want to write she owns a cupcake shop and
No.
Look, the key now
She
to
owned
sell
a
books,
cupcake-
I think they all have to be books about crimes in Sweden now. You can sell a bazillion of those
She
books.
owned a cupcake store that used plastic explosives to make cupcakes or something. No, we're talking about expanding into the YAs, write a young adult novel.
Sure, right.
I started a new series with Brian Haig, who's a phenomenal writer. That's going to come out next spring. It's about a New York City NYPD counterterrorism detective.
Ah, cool.
And maybe someday a nonfiction, how to write, motivation, that kind of motivation thing. But
that's terrific.
I'm having too much fun writing the Rap series right now to go do nonfiction.
And you got to watch out of these guys writing stuff like the Overton window. I mean, they're always gunning for you to try and you just got to be
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we got about 20 seconds here. We really appreciate your coming by the studio, and
I'm sorry I missed your wife.
Wish you best of luck. I'm gonna. Can I get one of these for her?
Absolutely.
And she's I think she likes Mitch Rapp more than she likes me. So, thank you.
You're real. He's fake.
Indeed. Thanks for watching Vince Flynn on The Blaze.